Matthew, a critic is sitting between the reader of his newspaper or magazine and the restaurant. Who does he owe his allegiance to?
Well, in my view, he owes his primary allegiance to the reader, because they're the people who are actually paying his salary and presumably paying for his expenses as well. So I think that's where, but I think that so that's where the primary responsibility lies. The secondary responsibility is clearly towards the restaurant which he or she is judging, and what they have to do is get their facts right. All criticism is subjective, and also all readers develop a relationship with their critic of choice, through whom, I mean, they filter the criticism of the critic through their own critical faculties. So they don't always take at face value what the critic says. Now, I think the critics are divided into two sorts. There's the critic as entertainer, and there's the critic as purveyor of information. In my view, when I was writing criticism, I wanted to give the reader sufficient information to be able to make their own judgment as to whether they want to go to the restaurant, or as well as giving my own judgment. But you have to give them enough detail to do that. I think that if I was critical of modern restaurant criticism, I think there's too little of that information giving. It's become a kind of sort of blood sport. Restaurant baiting has taken the place of bear baiting, and there is a sort of competitive element among the most carefully chosen insult. I mean, it is a serious problem for critics. Is that most restaurants are in the middle ground. How do you write those week after week and get people to read what you want to say?
Yes,
about
I'm not going to say week after week, well, it's quite nice.
No.
But on the other hand, I do think critics that are just having huge fun at the expense of the restaurateur, often criticising his fellow diners, which the restaurateur can do nothing about. Yeah. These old grockles sitting beside me, I mean, why does he let them? That's sort of gratuitously rude about the clientele, rude about everything else. I just think that it's irresponsible, because that chef or restaurateur has spent millions putting his restaurant up. He's trying really hard to get it right, probably. I mean, he's not doing it. He hasn't spent all that money in order to fail. He's trying. And I just think it's not a decent service to the economy to ruin somebody in their first week of their opening. I mean, I don't think critics should go in the first week. I think restaurateurs should charge half price for 3 months. And that would be fantastic. They'd make no money, but they'd learn their trade, because you can't be good on the first night.
No, I would say if you're a restaurant of any serious ambition, you won't be hitting your full stride for 6 months to a year, actually. But there is a sort of competitive element. Oh, we must get into the hot new opening now. We can't be out. I was too lazy to go and dash into that first week. I was like sauntering in a bit late, and and then lurching out of there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, having done very serious research. It's a matter of attitude. And the trouble is that the sort of editorial stance of newspapers could kill this instantly. They could say by choosing their critics on a different basis and giving them a different brief. But they don't, and it's become a sort of school of, as I say, a school of sort of inquisitorial, gratuitous. Well, it can be gratuitous. I mean, the fact is, but if you talk to someone like Adrian Gill, he said, "I am an entertainer. Don't judge me as a serious critic. He was judged me as an entertainer." We know how influential he is. We know that he has. But again, I think one should not overestimate the power of critics. There's a terrible tendency, particularly among critics themselves, for obvious reasons. But I think of all the restaurants which we've all lambasted over the years, only to see them still churning out mediocre meals years later, and those beautiful little gems who we've lavished praise upon, only to collapse into bankruptcy a few months later. I mean, I think let's not get too carried away.
Yeah, Matthew, you must be asked this all the time, but because I'm asked it, and that is, what do you think of the food critics, and what do you think of the great chefs? So let's start with the critics. I mean, you're one, so you have to.
Yes, I wrote restaurant reviews for 17 years. When I first started writing about restaurants, I knew nothing about how the professional kitchen worked, or indeed how the professional restaurant worked. Goodness knows, I spent enough time eating in them, but I knew nothing about the mechanics of it. And I thought, if I'm going to criticise restaurants, then I ought to. So I went and did a week's stage at the Manoir 4 Saisons. I wrote to Monsieur Blanc, as he was then to me, a godlike figure. And I went there and I said, this is not just posing in the kitchen, I want to work. And I did work really, really hard for a week there. And it was an absolutely invaluable experience. It taught me so much about the passion, the dedication, the discipline, the energy, and the teamwork needed, to make a kitchen operate absolutely at full bore at the highest possible standard. And it was really, I'm enormously grateful to that. It was a sort of damage limitation exercise as far as they were concerned. I mean, I got moved further and further and further away from actual food preparation. I wasn't even allowed to prepare food for the staff on the grounds I might poison them accidentally. And then about some years after that, I went and did a stage as a waiter at the Gavroche. I think
as a waiter.
Yes,
gosh, that was brave.
Front of house. It was all. It was braver than I knew. Well, the first day I was there, utterly useless, it has to be said, but trying to look as if I knew what I was doing. Anyway, at the end of the service, one of the Gavroche regulars called over Silvano Girondin, who was the legendary maître d' there. I said, Silvano, who's the old bloke you've got working for you? That was me. Something which Silvano could not wait to tell me. But by Friday, I had managed to manage the sort of the steady step, the peering eye, that sense of being in calm control. And I was standing at the bottom of the steps, as on the Friday service, dinner service. So at the bottom of the steps, and suddenly this man of military bearing bypassed the entire chain of command, bypassed Silvano and the other maitre d' and all the other guys, walked up, he grasped me, walked firmly by the hand and said, I just want to thank you we've had the most marvellous evening and congratulations on keeping service up to scratch at the Gavroche, and walked on up the stairs. And I thought, it's not getting any better than that, you've got to go, never go back. But so, I mean, where this leads to is that it seems to me that if you are going to criticise something, particularly if you have any influence over the business and the business of a restaurant, then you must have some experience of it. And if I had one criticism of some of my fellow critics, restaurant critics or contemporary restaurant critics, is that I think I can think of only one who has had that experience. And I think that's frankly a dereliction of duty and an absence of curiosity. You can learn a lot about restaurant criticism on the job, but I think you need to have a real passion for food at the back of it. And I think that too often critics forget that really people go out to have a good time. That's why we go to restaurants. We don't go off to have miserable times. We don't, and yet the misery, the nitpicking, all the sort of downsides, lack of generosity, I think, or it's a lack of understanding of what people are doing when they go to restaurants. It's as if somehow that the role of the critic is more important than the role of the reader. And I think there's a display of ego that is that I don't think is consistent with the actual responsibilities of being critic. God, that sounds pompous, but it's true.
Your phrase, a display of ego, takes me straight to telly chefs. Now I want you to talk about our great chefs, and some of them, I mean, nearly all of them can really cook.
Yes.
But
Ooh,
I have some...
Nearly all.
Nearly all.
Name me the ones who can't.
No, I better not. But there are a couple. No, I mean most chefs are passionate about food as you are. Their best friends are other chefs because they're also passionate about food, and they really care about it. But I do think that there's something that television does to people, and I hope it won't do it to you or to me. It is that it makes you think you're more important than you are. And some smart chefs go on like that. But I don't want you to name names. I just want you to tell me about your thoughts about great chefs.
I think television can turn you into a monster. It's easy to, I noticed this particularly when I was doing GBM and Market Kitchen, is that when you're standing up and there are 3, 4, 5 cameras on you, and people come there stroking your tie,
patting your
cheeks, picking the parsley out of your eyebrows, and telling you how marvellous you are. It feeds that the inner ego, the ego in all of us, and it's very easy. And that's why you have friends and family, frankly, to hack you off at the knees. Yeah. When you finish filming. I think that it's very easy to criticise telly chefs. In fact, it's very easy to criticise chefs, generally speaking. And I think that it's slightly unfair. I think they've done an immeasurable amount of good. If you cast your mind back 20 years, there was food on television, it was quite good and it was quite entertaining. But the fact is that now people know more about food. They care more about food. They may not actually cook more, but they are in fact better educated, food educated. They're more food literate than they were. And chefs have played an enormous part, in, for example, promoting producers, good producers, local producers. They're sort of catching on to that there are 4 seasons, and perhaps reawakening people's own consciousnesses about the seasons. So I think that chefs have a very valuable part. But it's unquestionably true that some of them believe their own publicity and
get a bit grand, don't they?
Well, they get preposterous. But what happens is there's hubris always waiting around the corner for us all, and one or two have been caught, as you might say, in compromising positions, and that's a tragedy for them. But I do think is if you think. If you think of the Roux brothers, wonderful teachers. You think of Raymond Blanc. That's the enthusiasm just carries you away. Rick Stein and that sort of these people who have actually changed, brought story. I was talking about chefs here and not cooks. Delia clearly is one of the most influential, and Nigella, one of the most influential figures, but they are of a different order. The sort of level of professionalism they have, it would not get them close to the level of cooking professionalism of
nor would they
chefs.
expect to. Yeah.
And then you have people like Heston Blumenthal, who comes along and opens up people's eyes in a different way. And goodness knows, Jamie Oliver. I think Jamie Oliver is one of the most important figures in the history of food in the media, partly because he's the first, you might say, a man of the people, who he speaks with that voice.
And he makes it all look so easy and so happy.
Accessible.
And a joy. Not difficult. And, I was reading a piece, which was a study of which chefs on television, which cooks and chefs on television people cook from. And it's still, and has been for 10 years, it's Delia and Jamie. Delia because they trust her and she's been at it forever and her recipes always work. And Jamie because it's inspiring. You think, oh, I could do that.
But I think they talk to 2 completely different audiences.
Yeah,
so I think that Delia talks to those people who actually know a bit about cooking and want to be helped onto the next stage. What Jamie Oliver, the sort of audience he spoke to, were those who were waiting for someone to take them by the hand and say, it's not that complicated, give it a go.
And it's okay for boys to do.
And it's very much okay for boys to do.
Thank God. Yeah.
But I think there's the influence of television chefs. But as we know from Great British Menu, we do not get television chefs on our show, and we give chefs who would never actually dream normally of doing conventional television, but they will do Great British Menu because for them the business of cooking is still so serious and so fundamental. And what I really want to say was that I think that through GBM I've become aware that we are living, I would say, through a golden age of British chefs at the moment. The importance of the fat duck is not the sort of technological breakthroughs that Heston Blumenthal and his team managed to do. It's that what he showed it was that you did not have to touch your forelock to the French or the Italians or the Spanish or the Chinese or the Indians. You could do the food that you wanted to do. And what that effectively did was break the shackles for a whole generation of chefs who were themselves extraordinarily well equipped technically, but who then had personalities to do things with, produce a sort of vision of food. When you think people like Sat Baines, Glyn Purnell, Nathan Outlaw, Tom Kitchin, I mean, just think of the people who've come through, Simon Rogan, these are outstanding chefs by anybody's standard. And now you can go to all, and incidentally, most of them are outside London.
I know, that's just wonderful.
So you could go almost anywhere in the country and you will find somewhere within a 100-mile radius an absolutely outstanding restaurant, or woman who's cooking really great food based on the ingredients that surround them.
And they're so proud of their local suppliers and their local ingredients. It is a brilliant... You know what, Matthew Fort? I think you should be Minister of Food. I really think you have the right attitude to food, and you're cerebral and funny, and I'm really pleased you came to talk to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Prue.